Hi, I'm Lisa Sudbeck with the Wedding Showcase, and I'm here with Vincent Gonzales. Vincent Gonzales is with Keller Williams Realty. He is a master club agent, which that puts him in the top 15% of agents in the county. Vincent believes that with his platform in real estate that he can improve the community he serves. His experience in volunteering and community work goes hand in hand with real estate and his career. The bigger his business grows, the bigger and more that he can help out in the real estate area. His ultimate passion, I believe, and his purpose in life is to help serve others and to give back with every opportunity possible. So with that, Vincent, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and why and how you became a real estate agent?
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, by the way. Amazing videos, by the way. I know I mention it all the time. Every time I see all of these videos.
Thank my producer.
There you go. Yeah, they're doing a good job. So thanks for having me on. It'll be actually 10 years now that I've been a realtor with Keller Williams Realty in Roseville. Basically I'm helping families with 4 units or less, residential homes, buy and sell homes. I've been doing it full time ever since I started, and I really enjoy it, especially getting involved with the community in that space and all the events around and meeting people. I really enjoy the whole career of it.
Yeah, you do really well with going to all those community events and being in charge of a lot of them. So let's say, okay, so, here I am, let's say, I'm engaged and, my future husband and I are, we've been renting forever and now we're like, let's buy a house. What do we do first?
Yeah, and that's usually what happens. It's funny when I see people get married or on social media, they just got engaged or, they're having their wedding. Typically within a year or two, that's when I start getting those calls. Hey, we just got married a year ago, 2 years ago. We want to start planning for the house. He owns a home, I own a home. We want to sell those and we want to buy our own, or we want to rent those out. Or we're both we're renting right now. We want to buy a house. Now that we paid for the wedding and all the expenses for that,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
expensive.
yeah, exactly. We started saving and or we're getting gift funds from family. Now we want to help buy a house. Where do we get started? The best thing is to start planning, 6 months to a year out. The biggest hurdle I think I see with folks is when they come to me trying to buy now, like they have a deadline, their lease is up in a month, and like, okay, we want to buy, we're ready to go. Can we buy now? Like plan ahead of time,
So it's a little bit too much pressure on yourself, kind of like don't
not
be running up against a lease, kind of like
yeah, and
there's
I
some
can
more
get
wiggle
it
room.
done. Yeah, we can knock it out. But I really want the best for my buyers and sellers, right? I like to plan ahead of time and to make sure that the client is comfortable too with the numbers, your monthly, your down payment, what the interest rate is, what type of loan you're getting. If you spend a lot of time with that part of the buying process, it makes it a lot easier, a lot smoother. Every realtor will say that, it's like plan ahead of time, makes everything a lot easier. So yeah, so I would say reach out to your realtor 6 months to a year before. Hey, this is our plan. In about 6 months to a year, we're planning to buy a house. We've been saving, but we're not exactly sure how much we need down. We're kind of comfortable with this much a month. What do we do from here? So I'll kind of get an idea of the deadlines that you have
Yeah.
and what your plans are as far, especially location too, like what area are you planning to move in? Typically it's like 2 cities, like say I'm in Roseville, my office is by the mall. So they'll say like, yeah, we want the west side of Roseville, the newer side, or if we can't get a newer build home, maybe we'll do some resale, or maybe we're in Rockland renting right now. It's kind of expensive. So maybe we want to purchase in Roseville. So knowing the area too will give you a good
Yeah.
idea of what the home purchase price will be. And then it'll tell you how much monthly your mortgage is going to be. So then I'll connect you with a lender in the area. Typically if you meet with a lender, they'll start to work out the numbers roughly, until you're really ready to start crunching the numbers to start getting the application started. But then I'll kind of get an idea of your plan. I'll kind of give you a market update, what's going on, and then I'll connect you with a lender that's like a good fit for you. Say if you're a veteran buyer, you might want to go with a veteran loan, or you're a first-time home buyer, a lender that knows all the first-time home buyer programs. Going through that part up front where there's no pressure. I don't rush anyone that we need to move now. It's like, okay, let's go through those numbers first. get comfortable with what that's going to be, and then we can start looking at homes. You get the pre-approval,
Perfect.
and then, once you guys talk it over, like, okay, we're comfortable with this a month. This is how much we're going to need down. Okay, we'll be ready in 6 months. Or sometimes they're like, well, we already have all that money now. Can we start looking now? It's like, okay,
You're like, yeah, let's do
let's
it.
go. Yeah, if that's what you're comfortable with, But really knowing those numbers, I think
Yeah.
is super important. So that this way, when you find a house, you put an offer in and you're in escrow, you're comfortable, you're ready to go. Because I would hate to force someone into trying to buy something. That's not what I do. It's like, okay, let's educate, and then you guys can make a decision when you're ready.
Perfect. So that kind of leads me into my next question. So as their couples start building their lives together, and then, buying a home brings on some fears, of course, like, can we afford a house, or will we qualify for a loan? So what advice do you give those first-time buyers to kind of calm down those first-time jitters?
Yeah, actually, that's pretty common. Like every buyer I get, there's usually some fear that they come in with that they've had in their family history, right? So maybe growing up, they had a roof leak where the roof caved in or something, right? Or during the recession, their family lost a house growing up. So I usually ask that question in the consultation. What is there anything about the buying process that you are worrying about, or maybe is a little fearful for you that I should know up front?
Yeah.
I met with a buyer a couple months ago. They're moving from out of I think SoCal, Southern California, and they had really bad experiences with new build homes.
Really?
Something happened where there was some issue with the wood, some dry rot with the wood that was being used, and it's a new build home, so you typically don't see that at all. But I guess there was some issue, and they were getting closer to closing, and they did their own walkthrough, as the home was being built, and they were looking at the wood, and the wood was like not good condition. I'm not really sure what builder that they were working with in Southern California, but I mean, that was something that they're very fearful of moving out this way. So
Yes.
they mentioned that story. So at least I can keep that in mind so that I can communicate with them what's important to them. Because every
Yes.
buyer is different. Like everyone has a different situation. I've been doing this now almost 10 years, and every single escrow is a little bit different than the other. It's like
Yeah.
no two
Looks
escrows
the
are
same, huh?
yeah, so I'll ask them, it's like, what are you fearful, or what is there anything that's important to you that I should keep in mind throughout the process?
Perfect.
You know?
So then how do you know what, or how does the couple know, or how do they know what they can afford versus what they can qualify for? Because I know those are two different things. A lot of times they say, oh yeah, you qualify for this amount, but can I really afford that?
And usually your lender will go through that whole thing. But basically, what they'll do, they'll look at your income, your debt to income ratio, your credit score. They'll pull a few other things, your work history. Typically it's like you need 2 years or more work history of the same type of job or similar type of work. They can usually link them together, or sometimes they can link them together with your schooling. But basically, they'll be usually you'll want to really start asking yourself, what is your comfortable monthly? It's like, okay, what are you paying right now? Usually like in rent, or what's your monthly mortgage? And then your lender's going to pre-approve you to the max. They'll say, okay, this is what the most you can get pre-approved up to. What are you comfortable with paying monthly? Like, well, we're paying about $2,200 a month, but I think we're able to go up to about $2,800 a month. And the lender's gonna be like, okay, well, if you put this much down, this is what the current interest rate is. So this is probably going to be your purchase amount. So they'll let you know what the max you can go up to, and then the buyer should usually choose what they're comfortable with. And you can kind of tweak those numbers a little bit too, based on how much you want to put down, different loan programs too. So there's different ways you can kind of adjust it based on the buyer's preference.
So, many couples getting married today, we kind of touched on this a little bit. They're already living on their own, or they're already living together. So registering for household items may not be needed because they already have double of everything. But what about, so registering for maybe for a down payment fund for their home? Or so what are some of the other costs and fees that maybe the buyer should be aware of? Because it'd be amazing to be able to have that jump start with that fund to go ahead and put that down payment on a home.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things to keep in mind, right? So yes, not only the down payment, but usually when you buy a house, things come up like the inspections, right, during escrow. So you're gonna want to do a home inspection, usually pest inspection, depending on the age of the house, roof maybe, the septic, the main line, inspection. So you do have to keep in mind the inspection amount, the fees for that. Home inspection is probably $400 depending on the size of the house. Your pest inspection maybe 200, $150. Your roof $150. So you can be doing $700, $600 in inspections.
Yeah.
You are going to have to pay some taxes too. Usually title will go through that with you, but you do want to keep in mind some of those different tax amounts that you have to pay after you purchase a home. Could be $1,000, in a couple months when you move in. Because basically when you buy a house, they're going to factor in the amount of, and I'm not a certified tax advisor, so I consult with your tax advisor for taxes or your local area. But typically they're going to factor in what the current amount of taxes are for the house that you're purchasing, and then they're going to charge you for the difference once you move in, the current tax amount that's due. So there's usually a little difference. Maybe it can be $500. Maybe it can be $1,000 difference in about 2 to 3 months. So you're gonna definitely want to factor in that. And just your utilities too. A lot of people forget to factor in their utilities monthly when they moved in.
Yeah.
You definitely want to factor in 6 months worth of cushion too of emergency funds, just in case something changes with the market or your job too. Most financial advisors will say that. If you don't have a financial advisor too, I know a lot of really good financial advisors and tax CPAs.
Aren't there also some utilities that possibly if you're renting, you don't normally pay those utilities, like your sewer and
Exactly.
your
Garbage,
water?
water.
Those are all new as a homeowner.
Exactly. Yeah. And I usually have a little cheat sheet too to help you with, okay, this is your monthly mortgage is going to be total amount. And then here's some other things to factor in. And usually when you move in too, there's going to be some repairs that you're going to want to do to the house or something you're going to want to tweak to your preference.
Different.
Like that old garage door, it's not really working as well, or it's really old. We want to update that, flooring or the new paint, or put in new like locks around the house.
That kind of puts me into my next question. So what are, looking at the homes and what advice do you give them when you're showing, and what things can you overlook and ignore? Like, oh, I hate that carpet. Well, you can buy new carpet.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I like to do when I'm showing houses, give them idea of condition, but not talking like I'm a home inspector, right? So realtors, we're not licensed home inspectors, so we can't say if a house is safe or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after looking at
So
1,000
many.
you could give an idea of the age of some items. I usually have my buyers reference inspectors because once you get your offer accepted, you have a time period to do your inspections. So usually once you pay for your inspections, you can ask your inspector whatever questions that might come up or you're concerned about. That's your time for it. But usually like a roof, a composition shingle roof, it's like if it's 10 years old, you probably got a good 10, 15 years left on it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a 30-year-old roof composition shingle, you're probably going to have to replace it in the next year or two. They only last for so long. Yeah, especially with the HVAC, right? Heating and air system. Those are big ones. If it's 2 years old, you got some
life.
Yeah, you got some good life on it. And typically homeowners are aware of these things now because it probably went out on you at some point, so you dealt with it. You
don't want to be without HVAC here, especially in the summertime.
Yeah, especially in this area, exactly. So those are big ones that could be an issue. So those things, I like to get the date on those or the condition of those up front as much as possible. A lot of the listing agents don't have the info like age of the roof or HVAC up front, so that kind of makes it hard. But I try to get as much as possible. It's like, okay, are they dual pane windows? Are they single pane? Typically if it's a newer house, right, 2015, most of the items are probably okay. But if it's built in the 70s, I tell my buyers, you can pretty much expect there's going to be a lot of updating to be done.
Yeah, unless they've done it already.
Unless they're done already.
Hopefully they're getting a house that stuff's already taken care of.
Exactly. And I ask my buyers up front, so what's your preference when buying a house? Do you want to look at homes that have all this stuff done, which majority of, I would say 80% of buyers prefer, or do you want to look at homes that need some work and you can do it once you move in?
Yeah.
So this way I know what to send them. Because if they're like, yeah, let's not look at homes that need a ton of work. We just want move-in ready, easy. If it needs new carpet, fine.
Yeah.
So this way, when I'm
What do they
looking,
call it? Turnkey? I just want a turnkey house.
exactly, exactly, which most buyers prefer, right? Because everyone has a job, everyone's super busy, so they typically prefer that. So this way, and that really cuts down the time of your home search. It
Mhm.
saves you tons of time having that conversation up front. Because now, if they see a house that they really love, they're like, "We love this house in this area. Let's take a look at it." I go, I
But it
just
doesn't
talked.
have this.
Well, I just talked to a listing agent, and it needs a new roof. Probably has a year left, and the HVAC is probably going to go out in the next year.
Mhm.
Is that something you're okay
You
with?
still want to go look.
Yeah, right. Give them the expectation up front, and then let
Yeah.
my buyers
Well,
decide.
that saves a lot of time.
That saves a ton of time, and I think stuff like that, a lot of buyers just don't realize,
Mhm.
because they assume that they'll look for the house and they'll just call the realtor whenever they want to put an offer in.
Mhm.
But if you don't go through all this stuff up front, it's gonna like it'll save you time and money.
Yeah, and then you
Yeah.
might get something that you really weren't expecting to get.
Yeah, and having those conversations, especially with the roof and HVAC or the plumbing. I'm helping a seller right now that has Kitech plumbing. It's kind of it's not the preferred plumbing
Yeah.
for houses. It wears and tears really fast. So just knowing that stuff, it
So I really like that
it's
that you
continued.
that you do discuss that criteria
Yeah.
with them, because there could be some challenges,
Mhm.
so that couples, when they're on their home buying journey, like you said, if they're going into something, I really love this location of this home, but then again, you're not really willing to put in a new roof right now. You don't
Yeah.
have the funds for that or the time, like you said. So it's good to have that conversation up front, so
Yep.
you could kind of have your little checklist going.
Yeah, see, and if you start that process up front, going to your realtor first, we can start having these conversations. Because if they want turnkey home, I'm gonna probably guide them to save a little bit more extra money for their down payment, or it's probably going to be a competitive situation going up against three offers. So you're probably going to
Yeah.
want to save an extra $5,000 or $10,000 for that.
So our biddings are right now, are we kind of going above?
Good question. That's always the biggest question. What's the market right now?
Uh-huh.
Is it a good time to buy? It's still not as crazy competitive as it was, right? During COVID, 2021, 2022. Those years were so crazy. It was ridiculous. So you
Yeah.
were seeing 20 offers, 15 offers. You're not really seeing that anymore because the interest rates aren't that low, 2.5%, 3%. They went up to like 8% last year. So that really slowed down the market.
But now it's dropping again, right?
It's slowly dropping. Yeah, I would say November last year, interest rates started going from 8%, 7%, 6.8, 6.9, 6.7. So they're in the sixes, high sixes, which is helping, enticing a lot more folks to move.
Yeah.
But you're still seeing about 30% less in inventory.
Wow. Okay.
But it's still, so for your average buyer, right? If you're looking in Roseville for 500,000, 550 or something like that, you might be going up against one other offer.
Okay.
You're not seeing 10 offers anymore. If
That's better.
yeah, if it's say 7 out of 10 condition, you probably won't even be going up against another offer.
Oh.
Yeah, unless it's turnkey, like you mentioned, which most
Then
buyers
everybody
want to
wants
go.
that.
You're probably, if it's 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, everything's remodeled, you'll probably be going up against 5 offers, 4
Okay,
offers. Yeah.
okay.
So you're going to pay for that premium.
That turnkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what are some of the biggest challenges when looking at the homes, what advice would you give the couples when showing, and like I said, what would you say? Just ignore that, that's okay.
Yeah.
How-
It's pretty much the same conversation every time. It starts with the check boxes, right? Usually buyers will come in probably with about 30 different check boxes of the things the house has to have. Has to be in a corner, cul-de-sac. Has to be turnkey. We want a bigger island. We want a big front yard, and we want a backyard, pool too, if possible. HVAC, roof, everything good condition. We want a really good master. We want the walk-in shower. So they come in with the whole thing of check boxes, which is not wrong. I
Yeah.
mean, I can find you whatever it is you're looking for. I've seen a ton of the houses, in our area. But as the time goes on, once they start looking for houses, you tend to see that it's really rare to find a house that has everything exact. They're out there. But when life happens, most people will move when life situations happen, right? They just had a kid, they just got their new job, they have to relocate from, Beale Air Force Base to out of town or whatever it is they're doing. Especially, we have a lot of state jobs too. People coming in from all over, especially Bay Area. You
Yeah.
get a ton of that, relocation type thing, which I have moving companies too that help with all that stuff. So I have a whole team of professionals. But they tend to weed down those boxes. So they're like, okay, these are the top 3 things we really need, like usually location, right? And so I work with them to kind of guide them on what these models in this neighborhood are probably going to have, what they're probably not going to have. I'm not going to tell them that they need to weed down that checklist. They'll see organically. They'll do it on their own.
Yeah.
I'll say if I find one of these, I'll definitely send them over.
Yeah.
I sent you everything over that's on the market right now. I'll be looking twice a day, 8 a.m. and usually around noon for you. But it's good to know someone's preference though. So I do prefer them to write that all out or to give me their preference up front, just so that I know what's important to them, because everyone's different. Like, I hate when realtors assume what is best for their client without asking. So we'll have that big checklist, and then as we're looking, the buyer every single time, it's crazy. They'll know when it's the house, like instantly walking in, like they'll know this is the one. Yeah. And that's what I tell them too before we start looking. Like, you'll know. It feels a little scary because there's so many options and there's so many things to worry about. But after looking at, buyers typically look at 30 online, all day long, just looking at a bunch of homes, then usually looking at about 10 to 15 in person. Buyers will know. Yeah.
So they just know.
Yeah. Buyers end up becoming the market experts on homes.
So that kind of puts us into our next question. So we found our dream home. What happens next? Can you walk us through the process? Maybe go over some of the terminology that you guys use to educate us on, so we're more knowledgeable and more comfortable at this stage.
And that's probably the second part that's most important in what your realtor does, right? Because it's not just about looking for homes and submitting offers. It's this part right here, right? So when you find the house you really love after looking through a ton of homes online and in person, it checks all the boxes. Like, Vince, we got to have this one. Let's do it. Yeah. So there's a few things that I'm going to want to do as a realtor, right? I'm going to want to build a rapport with the listing agent. It's like, call the listing agent, get them on the phone. Like, don't just submit an offer out the blue.
Yeah.
Like, build some rapport with them and get an idea what's important to the seller too. Because what if the seller is contingent, they're moving out of state and they can't sell this until they find something.
Yeah.
And who knows how long that's going to take. Not that that's right or wrong, but knowing that up front. So they're contingent, they're moving out of state. They're a little bit slower right now, so it could take them an additional month to move out. Relaying, communicating that to the buyer, because every seller situation too is totally different. That's the hard thing about real estate. It's not really, the escrow process. It's really about working with people, because you have the buyer involved, their family, the seller involved, their family, and then the other professionals. So there's so many things involved. But yeah, calling that listing agent, see what's going on with their seller's situation and trying to connect the two, trying to see if it's going to work out. It's like, okay. Or if it's a multiple offer situation, what can we do to make our offer stand out? For my buyers, other than just price too, because I don't want to make them, I'm trying to save my buyers as much money as possible. I don't want them to just go higher in price.
Yeah.
Because what if they do need that extra month rent back? Typically after 29 days, the 30th day, that becomes like a lease agreement type thing. So I try to stay out of going over 29 days of rent back. Rent back is staying in the home after escrow closes. If that's an option that's needed, then we can work that out. No problem. Yeah. But that might be really important to the seller. So I'll ask my buyers, hey, is that okay with you? That might make your offer really strong if you're able to give them free rent back 29 days in the house.
Well, and then you don't have to put your price up.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't have to offer more.
Right.
That's a perfect leveraging point.
Yeah. And I'll ask the listing agent. So if we gave them the free 29-day rent backs and didn't go up higher in price, you think that would be the strongest offer? They'd be like, oh yeah, that'd be really strong. Some agents won't say, they'll just say submit highest and best. It's like, well, trying to work with you, Usually on my listings, I'm super transparent too. Like, I'm not.
Well, that's what makes you so good at what you do, because you talk to the other listing agent and you try to get to know them.
And it's not me versus you. It's all of us
We're trying to help
together.
our clients here.
I think that's one of the biggest struggles I see as a realtor is we're having to work with those realtors that have that ego where they're like, I'm better than you. Do what I say. This is how we're
Hmm.
doing it. And it's one way or nothing. I can still work with
Yeah,
everybody.
you're pretty good with
I'm
that.
pretty good at that, but
With different
it's
personalities.
sometimes a little tough. We're just like, okay, all right, okay,
Okay. Okay.
sounds good. But yeah, communication, right? Seeing what could match up to work to help my buyer's offer stand out, and just to keep building that rapport with the listing agent, because that also shows that this is how the communication is going to be throughout escrow.
Yeah.
They notice that a good realtor will prefer that. Like their offer wasn't as strong; it was like $3K lower, but this agent has been really on it, and their lender is really good. I've
Yeah.
worked with that lender before. Let's accept this offer
Yeah.
because the listing agent is going to
Report back to the seller.
on which one they prefer, because the seller is going to be, well, which one do you think is the best?
Yeah. Yeah.
On average, there's probably 30 terms in the offer that you can
Oh.
put in. Whatever you put in your offer, you can submit to the seller.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to negotiate or whatever can be in your offer. So I usually like to do that through Zoom call or in person too with my buyers. Like
Okay.
that first offer, I really love to go over every single term.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like how realtors will just write the offer up and send it to their buyer and say, hey, let's submit this one. This is a strong
Without
offer.
discussing.
Yeah. I find that a lot of buyers end up not knowing what's going on. And you'll know when you're in escrow is when the buyer starts asking a lot of questions. Like, hey, so you mentioned, that the escrow fees were split, or how does that work again? Like, when you're in escrow, the buyer should already know that
Should
stuff.
know all
I
that
mean,
stuff.
it's a lot, so they're gonna keep asking throughout.
Mm-hmm.
But I would try to do a bulk of that up front so they have that expectation going in. Then your offer gets accepted. Let's hop on another Zoom call and we'll go through all that again.
Yeah. So everybody feels comfortable.
Yes.
Level of comfort for everybody.
Yep. So by the time we're doing inspections, we've already covered that 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'll go over some of that stuff too in the consultation.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So then after the offer has been accepted, now what happens?
Yeah. So inspections, that's a big one. I think it's something like 80% of escrows end up falling out of escrow because there was some hurdles with the inspections.
Okay.
And that's why I like to go over the inspections a lot. The condition, I would say, as much as possible before submitting an offer, just to give my buyers an expectation, right? If there's a huge tree in front of the house next to the main line, like septic,
Yeah.
that kind of worries me sometimes because it could pierce the
Mhm.
line right there. The tree is so close to that
Like
water
have
line.
issues.
Yeah, and again, I'm not an inspector, but just giving the buyer, and not to scare buyers, but just
Yeah.
kind of
Educate them.
Yeah, like the chances of something happening in that situation is probably a little bit higher than if
more
there was
probable.
yeah versus a brand new house, no trees,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. So once your offer gets accepted, then we'll go over the buyer typically has 3 days to submit their earnest money deposit or their good faith deposit, which is about 1% of your offer. So you have 3 days to get that in, and then you usually do your inspection period. Right now, I would say it's probably typical to do about a 7 to 10 day inspection period.
Okay.
Every market that changes. Some really competitive markets like 20, 21, 22. A lot of buyers have to waive their inspection contingencies.
Okay.
Is that safe? I don't prefer that, because I don't like my buyers not knowing the condition when purchasing home. But if you're trying to get an offer accepted in those markets, you pretty much had to. Even appraisal contingencies, a lot of people were removing.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your offer's accepted. Then you start digging deeper into the condition of the home. Once you do your inspections, you talk to your inspector. You're comfortable with everything. Maybe you might want the seller to do some repairs or some credits for repairs. Say if they're I don't know, like there's a deck in the back that's kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
The fence is falling apart. You usually have dry rot, in the shingles of the roof, stuff like that, which sounds a lot scarier than it really is. But yeah, maybe some credits you can negotiate, like $5,000 that the seller can provide for these repairs.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
That's nice to know.
I typically don't guide my buyers to have the seller do the actual repairs, just because there's so much hurdles that can happen
Mhm.
during that process. typically what happens is when the seller does the repairs, the buyer's not happy with how they did them
Yeah.
because everyone wants it done their way. So then you go back and forth and the deal falls out. So typically if you do a credit, it's a lot
It's
smoother.
a lot smoother. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes good sense.
Mhm.
So, what advice do you have for couples that are getting married? How would you put them on the path to purchasing a home, or just advice all around?
That's a good question, especially on your podcast. Yeah, I mean, that's what you guys are talking about the most. I mean, I would say having those discussions up front would probably be smart. Where do you plan on living in the next 10 years?
Yeah.
What's your plans with your career? You know, are you planning to stay in the area longer than 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, maybe that
Good
would
question to ask.
yeah, because you'll be surprised on how many buyers I help buy a house, and then a year later they'll end up needing to sell for whatever. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Life happens, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But on the realtor perspective, that would probably be a good conversation to have, you know,
Yeah.
because typically for most folks, when they're buying a house, the house that they purchase is their largest asset,
Yes.
you
Yes,
know.
it is, yeah.
So that's probably a good one. And then, you know, a lot of the times people have family realtors, friends, and that's kind of a conflict sometimes. So who are we going to use, you know?
Yeah.
And I always tell my family and friends, it's like, don't feel obligated like you have to use me. Of course,
But you should.
yeah, of course, if you want to use me, I'd be happy to. But I'm not going to, you know, destroy a relationship based
Because
on
you didn't choose me.
Yeah. I hear that sometimes, and it's like, what?
Yeah, no. So, talking about having to possibly sell your home within a year, what is a good amount of time to live in your home before you sell your home? Is there a good time?
I mean, you know, typically, I think the average years that people stay in their home nowadays is like 7 to 10 years, like right around the eight-year mark or something like that, 7 to 8 years. Because your first 2 years or so, 3 years, you're paying mostly interest and not even the principal.
Yeah.
So at least 2 years, you know, at least 4 years, you know, maybe the fifth year comes, you're planning to sell. So probably right around there if you're going to sell, like the soonest, maybe after the fourth year or so, fifth
Okay.
year. It's hard to really say though, because there's no really right or wrong, because everyone's life situation is so different. What if they just acquired an investment property and so they want to sell this to move to buy a bigger house for them, or their family wants to live together or whatever, you know? It's kind of hard to guide on something like that. But I think giving them that info, the first 2 years is the interest and you get into the principal, you know, of your loan. Then I think they can decide what's best for them, you know. And I
Perfect.
usually will, anytime I help a buyer or seller, I usually will ask them, do you have a financial advisor? Do you have someone helping you with insurance? What about trust and will? Because that's my big thing, you know. It's like not just helping someone buy or sell a house, but it's like transferring wealth,
Yeah.
especially folks right in that season of life, which I've been getting a ton the last 2 years. They're downsizing, they're getting older, so they might go into assisted living, right, or something like that, or might get assisted living in their home. They have a few properties they want to sell. They have some stocks they want to sell, and they're going through a lot at their time right there. So typically, if you have professionals that can help with all that, you know, in that same time frame, it helps them a lot too,
Yeah.
right? It's especially too. I have some people where they own a few homes, they want to sell them all. They don't want to worry about like managing those. You could always get a property management too to help with that too. But they're like, we just want to sell them all. What are our options here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so what if you have $100,000 in capital gains, $50,000 in capital gains? What are our options here? And again, I'm not a tax advisor or CPA, but let's talk to a tax advisor,
Yeah.
you know, or let's talk to a financial advisor. What if you can put that loss into some stocks, you know, or some type of 1031 exchange or something like that, you know, a DST or something like that, where instead of losing that money, you can actually invest it and then you can give that to your family too.
Perfect.
So a lot of the wealth transfer, I think that's what is exciting to me now, where it's not just a buy or sell type thing.
Yeah.
It's like what,
The
like,
big whole picture.
yeah, let's talk about your plans for the next 5 years, your 10 years. Are you
Yeah.
planning to stay in the area? You're not planning to stay. You're planning to relocate. What's that look like? What's the moving company's fees or whatever it is? You know,
Mhm.
even cleaning companies. You know, that's usually a big one for sellers that want to sell. You know, helping them with all those vendors. Like,
Mhm.
there's a lot of people attached to
To a sale.
Yeah, to a sale, buy or sell.
So I'm going to get kind of mushy on you now.
Mhm.
So all the 10 years that you've been helping people, putting them in their homes, what is one of your stories that stands out that like, well, I was just so happy when they finally got the home that they wanted. You know, maybe you even got a little teary-eyed. What's the one story that stands out for you?
Oh man, there's a lot of them. I mean, the relocation ones are really good. Or the ones that are transferring wealth where they lived in the house a long time. Um, One recently that I could think of that that it's just like and it's cool when you drive past the house because you've helped those people. Like,
Yeah.
even after they sold, you're like, man, I was in the house for a month straight. Um, Last year there was a past client that reached out. They want to help their family member, the mother-in-law, sell their house. And she's probably been there for about 40 years or so, 35, 40 years. So a move like that's like big.
Mhm.
It's like they want to make sure they can trust every professional in there. The move is going to be smooth because if you're living somewhere for so long, it's going to be hard to make that move.
Yeah.
Which I understand. Like, you're used to where everything's at, and all your neighbors.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're going to get old enough to probably have to make that move or live with family or whatever it is. So that was her situation. She had to move. She didn't really want to, but they found a home that they really loved. Assisted living situation. So they're like, we need to jump on this fast. We really want to sell. It was a little tough, I think, at first for her to gain my trust with her. But I knew it was such a big situation for her. I wanted to be really patient. But it was cool to see that relationship start to get closer as she started to trust me through it.
Yeah.
And then after, she was really happy. Like,
Aw.
she was happy that her family and I were able to not push her to make that move, but help nudge her that that's probably going to be the best move for her now while you can.
Yeah.
Because then it gets a lot harder. So their family was super happy. She was happier to be in that situation. And, when you're in the house, you can see all the things that they've had over the last 30, 40 years. Like, there was some really cool stuff in there, actually,
Yeah.
like collectible stuff. But just to be part of that move where
The next stage of life.
that next season,
Mhm.
that they trust me enough to make that move. And the family too. I've helped a lot of their family members. So after helping someone's family members for a good while, I forget how long it's been now. 2018 when I first helped them, maybe 2017.
Okay.
You get to know the family better too, especially at the events. I see them at all the events around town. So it's really cool to be able to meet all the family members in one family, and then to see, especially the kids get older and stuff,
Yeah.
and like, that's pretty cool. So that one that I can think of right now really stands
That
out.
touched you, huh?
Yeah, where you start to meet the whole family.
Yeah.
That's really fulfilling to me, and that's why I think I got into real estate, was to do something that was fulfilling and not just transactional.
Yeah.
I've worked a lot of jobs in the past, but this is the first thing that really felt like it meant something.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
sweet.
I think so. And not that I'm doing such an amazing job or nothing, but just at the capacity that
You're so humble.
we're interacting with people at. Like,
Uh-huh.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you do a really great job, in putting people in homes and whatnot, but also around in the community, because I know you do a lot in the community, different organizations that you
Mhm.
help monthly. So that's really nice. So
Yeah, and that thing, that kind of happened organically, kind of, I guess. So my first 4 years, 3 years, it was really salesy, transactional, your typical sales type of thing, passing out flyers, open houses, calling around houses, trying to find clients.
Yeah.
You're trying to build up that book of business, calling everyone. That works. But I think after 2 to 3 years, I was kind of starting to feel burnt out, or like the energy to keep doing that was getting really low.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, man, there has to be a better way to get business, but to also connect with people where it's more fulfilling, and then to give back too, because I really like meeting people and seeing the different programs around town, especially around Roseville too. There's so many community groups.
Yeah.
I'm like, how can how can I build something where if you get business from it, you can put it back into a community program that can help people.
Yeah.
That would be super cool, you know. And so I think my first move to connect with the community was the Roseville Chamber, you know, and we talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
Any chamber member that we talk to with Roseville,
Yeah.
you know, and luckily it just happened to be a really good chamber in my backyard. Like
Yeah.
my office is by the mall. The chamber office is 8 minutes right
not
there.
far at all.
Yeah. And it's a 5-star chamber. There's a ton of folks at all the breakfasts.
And that's how we met.
They're
We met at the chamber.
exactly, right? Because I was thinking, like, where would you go in a community to meet professionals? Like, does that thing exist? And I knew other realtors that were part of different chambers. So I'm like, oh, yeah, duh, I should just join the Roosevelt Chamber. And yeah, so you start meeting the nonprofits, the professionals, the business owners. You know, if you own a pizza shop, if you own a bakery around town, the salon, you know, insurance, realtors, lenders, you know, folks.
Wedding showcase.
There you go. Yeah. You start meeting everybody. So that was kind of the first intro into meeting community groups. I was part of B&I groups and some professional ones like that. But I think it takes some time to really find what your niches or your passion is within community groups too, networking groups. Because I do that monthly business mixer, Placer County Business Connection. Which I meet a ton of folks that come to that. I've been doing that for years now. So it just starts, I think if you start focusing on networking as a way to connect with the community, because the community in large too, there's so many things to connect with. It's like, okay, because for a while I was saying yes to everything. You're getting stretched so thin. It's like, well, there's only one of you. You can only do certain things. So you slowly, I think, getting deeper into what your niche is.
Yeah.
You know, especially the nonprofits. Like we talked about this hundreds of times. Like there's so many good nonprofits in every city.
Yeah.
I always say, I don't think cities can function without these nonprofits because they're doing the things that they're passionate about. And I think when you're doing something you're passionate about, you're going to do a lot better with the funds you have, you know, because there's a lot of programs out there that are like state funded which those are really good too. But I just think these nonprofits are different where they're really tapped into what they do best and they're knocking it out, you know? So yeah. So anyway, if I did a big Easter event, you know, over the weekend, I had a nonprofit out there, our pals, you know, the Roseville Police Activities League, you know, just any way that I can put a nonprofit in there where they can possibly benefit or get the word out what they do. I try to make it a point to do that for every event.
And you have a new nonprofit every month, correct?
Yeah. So for my monthly business mixer, if there's any, you know, nonprofit around Placer County that needs some help, hey, this is who we are. These are some needs we have. They can come get a table for free and then get a 1 to 2 minute pitch during the mixer.
Yeah.
Because typically there's like 65 attendees or 70 professionals. So that seems to work pretty cool. And a lot of professionals love to meet the nonprofits or want to help. They just don't know who.
They don't know how to get connected.
And that first started around the holidays where people would reach out to me and say, hey, our office has some funds. Do you know any nonprofits in the area that can use these funds? Or we want to volunteer. Do you know any nonprofits? So I was like, you know, I need to start meeting more of these so this way I can connect them.
Yeah.
So it kind of started there. And then once you meet them all, you know, you want to help them.
You want to help everybody.
Yeah, every single nonprofit.
Well, that's good. You won't have any shortage of nonprofits to be charitable towards.
Right. Yeah. And I remember when I first started looking for nonprofits, I couldn't find them anywhere.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I can't find no nonprofits, you know.
Now they're everywhere.
Yeah. Now, hopefully it feels more accessible to folks, you know. So that's super fun too. It's like, you know, the holidays, you know, there's some amazing nonprofits that are doing holiday events where you look forward to doing that for the holidays.
Yeah.
Where for me now, that's
like, for instance, you do the snacks, the Santa Claus one every year, right?
Yeah.
Where you take pictures.
Yep. I
with
do
Santa.
Yep. I do the photos with Santa Claus one where there's vendors in there selling holiday vendor treats. I'll have donuts and stuff. Professional photos with Santa Claus. That one was at
SPC.
SPC. Yeah. There in Roseville.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, nonprofit where they can appreciate the people coming out, you know, to their location and showcasing whatever needs they have there. Or there's other nonprofit. Linda Warren does the Lost but Not Forgotten,
Yep.
the big rap day, which is, that one's super fun. Everyone, we see each other all the time at all the events.
Yeah, yeah.
So you start to see the same people around the community.
Yeah, that's nice.
Where it's fun though. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the stuff I look forward to now for the holidays versus, I mean, I love my family too. I see my family in the holidays too. But I love that.
It's nice to see the extended family.
Exactly. That we see all the time throughout the year, so.
But you see their families and their children. And
We're now it's one big family.
yeah, exactly. So I know that you have an event coming up in April for Keg and Cork. So who are you who's the charity for that one?
That one is going to be Kids First.
Kids First. Okay.
Actually, their office, they just moved locations in where my office is, right by the mall off Gibson. There's Villa Sport right there and Lazy Dog right there. So our complex is right there. But so that's the nonprofit Kids First. And they just opened up, I think, a month ago, Keg and Cork.
Yeah, we did their
ribbon cutting.
Ribbon cutting.
Yep, with the chamber. Yep, and that's how I met them too. And so, that's like a perfect business that I'd love to do a mixer at, because then it helps them showcase their new business.
Yeah.
When you start a new business, you're trying to get the word out to everybody.
Exactly.
And they're super cool. The owner's super humble, where they're like, let's do a mixer. Like, the more
I want to
people...
try to get them on the podcast next. So that's why I'm kind of putting a little plug in for them.
And it's cool talking to them on why they decided to get started too.
Yeah, they have their own story too.
I love hearing those stories, like other entrepreneurs, around town on how they get started, on why they're doing what they do. That's what usually energizes me. It keeps me energized. If I'm locked in my office all day, it's like I get, burnt out.
Well, I know we were just supposed to talk about real estate, but I couldn't not have you here and not talk about all of the charities that you do, because it's very good for the community, and it's giving back. So.
Yeah, and just that, having that trait to be able to connect people. I didn't really think that was a thing. Like I was like, everyone can do that. Like that's not really a skill, or whatever.
But it is.
But it's just, there's so many groups out there. I think that's all it takes, is that little connection, and then they'll start, and they'll meet each other, and they'll figure out their own event or whatever it is. So that's super fun too, to meet someone, and I'm like, I got the person for you to meet, or you should come to my event. Like so-and-so would love to meet you, you know, and especially what you guys do is, usually I'm working with families, and they'll reach out to me sometimes a couple of years before we're going to get married, or
you can send them my way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's cool to help my clients with other professional needs they need, in their life, which helps stay connected to them, with whatever they're doing.
Well, thank you so much, Vince. It was so nice talking to you. I'm happy that you're able to educate the people on how to purchase that first home, and to not have those jitters, because, yes, buying a house is big, and it's your probably biggest asset, but you've put some ease to it to help us all. So thank you so much.
It goes smooth every time. They'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the talk with Vince. He's very, very knowledgeable in the real estate agency, but I also wanted to make sure that I gave a special thank you and shout out to our vendors for Wedding Showcase. As you know, our Wedding Showcase was at Cal Expo on February 25th, and it was a great event, but all events don't go off without a hitch without having such great sponsors. So I want to make sure I thank our diamond sponsor, which was Lush Balloons, and they did a phenomenal job of lushing out our event. It was so beautiful and gorgeous. And also want to make sure that I thank our media sponsor, which was Real Weddings, and they did a great job of advertising us. They are a wonderful, wonderful magazine. Our grand prize sponsor, which was Retreat Salon and Spa out in Roseville, and they donated a gorgeous, gorgeous gift basket that a really lovely couple won at the event at Wedding Showcase. Such a cute story. They've actually known each other since they were like 13 years old. So they were newly engaged for 2 weeks when they were at the event. So it was a really cute love story. So glad that they won that prize. It was really nice. And then our fashion show sponsors, which was Carriage House Flower Farms, and they did all of the floral design for our fashion show, and they took care of all the bouquets and the boutonnieres for all of our fashion show models, and it was just gorgeous. And then, of course, there was Our Place Event Space and Kitchen, who provided the box lunches for our models and for our staff to make sure that we didn't go hungry. And it was a lovely, it was a lunch that was above and beyond even what I thought it was going to be. And then, of course, we had our VIP lounge sponsors, which was Petite Events Company, and they decorated our VIP lounge beautifully. They also did a separate space in the fashion show hall, just gorgeous, gorgeous rental. So if you are looking for something for your wedding or your event, to decorate it out, you'll want to contact Petite Event Company. They're great. And then also White Moon Rustics, they brought out their wood craftsmanship furnitures, and they also will rent as well as sell. So they have beautiful, beautiful stuff. So we'll check them out, White Moon Rustics. And then, of course, there was a Doughboink, which they did the VIP small bites. And let me tell you, I heard so many great compliments on their fare. So if you need some catering, go and check out a Doughboink. Thanks again, and we'll see you at our next one.